don't know how well the recording will turn out, but got it here. And then I'm going to go sharing. And I'm going to go full screen. Right. And we want to get rid of. Right, cool. So welcome to RPIrates, everybody. We got a different set of faces. Where's Michael? I don't know how to do an RPIrates without Michael here. And so for those of you who have never been to an RPIrates before, we are the Sasha, thank you for showing up. We just got started, so grab your pizza and stuff like that.
I brought a couple of friends.
That's wonderful. I was just going to start there. I was just telling Deb, she's on the WebEx, that I hope Sasha shows up because he's really contentious. And
Contentious mean?
It means you argue with me.
Oh, I actually want to write something about the paper that you posted today.
All right, cool, excellent.
They use circular definition.
So get some pizza, and we just started as you walked in. So those of you who have never been to our RPIrates before, RPIrates is the RPI R users group who existed for at least 5 years. RPIrates was founded on this idea that there are a number of different classes and research groups that have adopted R, and so there is a community that happens, and we usually meet about once a month. We also have an email list, which everybody that's got a heartbeat is I put them on. In our monthly meetings, we usually have some topic, some special topic. Like tonight, it's this. It was provoked by that ChatGPT code synthesis. And then if there's time, and I don't know if there's going to be time tonight because I think we're going to fill our time talking about this stuff. We usually do airing of grievances, which is like a help session. If people have got questions about they're having trouble with their R code or whatever, we throw it out there for discussion. And feats of strength, if somebody's done some really cool thing or some cool visualization that they want, just are aching to talk about, we'll talk about that. But I think tonight we're going to be focusing on this massive feat of strength, which is it actually, as it turns out, it's this emergence since 2017 of this new kind of large language model in AI that has allowed number one, just these amazing chatbots, including ChatGPT, to do cool things, but also this code generation, which in many cases is pretty astounding. And last month, some of you on the list may have seen Chris Sims, who is a psychology professor.
Cognitive science.
What's that?
Cognitive science.
Cognitive science. I'm sorry. Is there a different? I don't know. I'm trained as an engineer, Sasha. I got no idea what science stuff is.
Fair enough. I think they're the same as well.
Okay. So, like Chris provoked a discussion where he actually not only did he experiment with writing some R code, but he actually experimented with solving some submitting a challenge response, some contest response using that, and got some impressive results. I was actually trying to get him to actually lead this, but then he said, "No, that's all I did, John, was that." So what you're going to talk about is much more. So what I wanted to do was kind of talk about. So first of all, does everybody heard of ChatGPT? Okay, everybody's heard of that. Has everybody heard of at least this phenomena of people like writing code of some kind using ChatGPT? Okay, and so you've got this idea that somehow this new AI is somehow hoovering up the universe and you can magically write code. Okay, that's kind of the proposition. So we started seeing, there he is.
Okay.
We've been waiting for a half an hour for you to show up. We weren't going to start without you. We weren't going to start. So we started seeing stories as early as 2021, but they were more subdued about magically that this new AI was being used to write code. And I believe that this, and this, I believe, was the IntelliCode. So I should also note, these slides are full of links. And so I'm going to, after we're done, I'm going to send out an email to the list with these slides. There's links to tutorial videos that explain a lot of this stuff. There's links to basically every slide has a link to something. And so I'll send that out afterwards. And if anything comes up during here that we need to add to that, I'll do that. Okay. But this basic idea that this new kind of AI called large language models, which is actually based on something, two new models called transformer neural networks and attention. Those two have been combined starting in 2017 to create some very powerful tools for what's called code completion. So really what we're talking about here for all the languages that these AIs have had the ability to write code for is code completion, or given a prompt, given a natural language prompt, create code in a language of choice. They also have the ability to do the opposite. Given code, given a code sample, give me like a human language, a natural language expression of that. And they also have, some of the APIs have the ability, given a block of code, say R code, insert comments in that code, which is amazing. As an instructor for Intro to Data Math and Data Analytics Research, all right, now the students have no excuse not to write comments. But,
or the students will be like, the generation of the comments is trivial and has been left as an exercise
to the instructor. This from the TA of the year, I'm going to make them withdraw your thing. So we started seeing these stories. This is going back. So all this hubbub was happening about ChatGPT was happening, at the end of last year, just, November, December of 2022. But what I'm showing here is OpenAI, so we heard about OpenAI making GPT-3, this large language model, available earlier. They cranked it up in 2021 with something called Codex. Okay. And Codex is like this supermodel. They should have called it Gazelle. Anyway, football. It embraces not only the natural language examples on the web on various sources, but also code repositories. And what that has allowed is this ability to do what we're talking about, is if you've got natural language examples, you can actually generate code, and vice versa. And this is all done in ways that I barely understand, essentially by predicting. So, and this is all predicting, and this is going to be a theme that we have to keep returning to. This is all prediction. This is not based on trying to somehow reason out what the person is saying. Okay, if I enter a prompt, it's not like reasoning over what does this mean. It's all based on what is in the code examples that are out there. And the goodness is fundamentally based on size of that harvest that they're doing. Okay. So New York Times in September of 21 is doing stories about OpenAI's ability to write code. And so even back then, people are discussing, oh my God, but nowhere near the level of what we've seen in the last couple of months. Okay. So this is every once in a while, you'll see, at some conference, like some web conference or some conference in science, they'll give an award to these authors for like the paper of the decade. Okay. And so 10 years previous, some authors published a paper that was just remarkable. Okay. This paper, Attention is All You Need, which is done by the Google Brain people in 2017. This is a huge paper. It's just, everything. It explains everything that is going on right now, everything that we're seeing. It is just, and there are innumerable really great YouTube videos out there that step through what you're seeing. If you want to have somebody with a Russian accent explain it to you, if you wanted to have an English accent, they sound really good, the English accent. The British accent, I should say. But essentially what we have, it's the prediction or the text generation from prompts or code generation from prompts. This is about everything. This is not just, this is this general model. What you have is these two parts. This is called the encoder stack, and this is the encoder stack. This is the decoder stack. And you have to correct me if I'm making any mistakes whatsoever.
I'll do my best. Can we zoom out just a little bit? Because it's showing off the bottom of the image, right?
And I do that. You want me to do that here?
I think because it has a scroll bar. So I think we're not seeing the full picture.
So you want me to, just.
Yeah, see now we're getting more of it on the bottom there. Output embedding. There you go. That's better.
Okay.
You can also double click the screen to make a full screen.
Just double click the screen.
No?
Double click the paper. Yeah. No, doesn't work?
No, I don't want to do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's better. Now we can.
Okay. Good suggestion. I don't want to do it. So I won't. It would take me much longer than the RPIrates, and I would do it badly. Okay. But I'll point. You're going to see this over and over again. Okay. This encoder part, this decoder part, this embedding, but what you'll see here is this aspect. So they refer to attention. Attention is for each word that they're creating an embedding for. It's a specific relationship to what other words they have to pay attention to. So the word is very deliberate. So they say over and over again, it's not about words, it's about numbers. The computers want to deal with numbers. What's happening here is they're creating, during the encoding phase, they're creating a huge tensor for all of the tokens that they're creating. Part of that tensor is going to include the attention. Part of it is going to include, and this is a novel thing, is this representation of sequence. So it doesn't scale for them to create, so order and sequence is important, but how do you do that efficiently? So this paper introduced this, and how do you do it in a way that you can then parallelize over, so you can handle billions of tokens? So they introduced this notion of these sinusoidal functions, which they sort of sample, and as they create this tensor, they put that in there as well. So during this encoding side, they're taking care of that, and then over here is this decoding side. Part of what's happening is as they do the predictions, they feed back around. But this is it right here. So anybody that is interested in NLP, for example, anybody that wants to get into this work, you gotta understand this. When your professor starts talking about recurrent neural networks, get up, walk out, find a YouTube video on this stuff. Tell them Dr. Erickson told you to, because this is how it's all being done right now. Okay, so that's the That's the big paper. Okay, and there's this wonderful subtle statement. We are excited about the future of attention-based models and plan to apply them to other tasks. Yeah, great. Like startup companies, billions of dollars, tens of billions of dollars of funding, all that good stuff. So there are two links here that I've embedded. Both of those in slightly different ways offer good step-by-step explanations. The second one, I think, is probably a little bit better than the first one in terms of just stepping through and trying to explain. But the videos that you'll find also, they have lots of good animations of tensors like spinning through space and that. So I won't, we're not going to go much, I really can't go much deeper into the detail, but just to explain that really what's enabling all of this to happen now is the efficiency of what they're doing here. Okay, and their just ability to explode that. So these guys really, they've set it up for everybody. So OpenAI and OpenAI Codex was not really the first to do this, this code generation, code completion. This paper from IntelliCode Compose was written in 2020. There's a really nice paper that accompanies this and a video that I've got a link to that accompanies where one of the authors, I believe it's Alexei. I believe he is the one who talks through it. And it's a really nice explanation of applying this model, this transformer neural networks, attention model to this. So they're doing it there. This was kind of discussing a specific extension to Visual Studio. I don't know, when did they buy GitHub? Did they own GitHub yet? At 2020, did they own GitHub yet?
No,
That's really close, but
Yeah.
I think it was last year or so.
Yeah, so it's later that they actually bought GitHub. This is a really cool paper. It's a really extensive paper. And you can see it's got a gazillion authors, but it's by the OpenAI people. It's their evaluation of this whole notion of generating code. So this is like the mother lode right here. Okay, this is, so, and that's 2021. Okay, so 2021 is when they really were, this is where they're talking about Codex, they're talking about GitHub Copilot.
I just looked it up. They bought GitHub in 2018.
2018, okay. So Microsoft, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But there was such an upheaval,
Yeah.
but so this particular paper is very key, and it goes on and on and on. This is an interesting paper. This is a code completion, code generation paper that was published. So the archive preprint was 2022. February 2022. They had it's AlphaCode. They got it published in Science in December. Come on in. Get the lock on. Hey, come on. Make sure you get the good stuff here. Okay. And there's some Valentines cookies over there.
Oh, happy Valentine's Day.
Yeah, that's no, Alaka, not me.
Do any of these authors,
I shocked your wife when you had RPIrates today.
Right, yeah.
Here.
Before I left the house this morning at 5, I made sure that there was stuff laid out. Okay.
John, I think Deborah had a question.
Oh,
Yeah,
go ahead, Deb, I'm sorry.
are any of these authors kind of more in leadership roles than others? I mean, I know there's a ton of authors, but like, if there were one person in charge, do you know?
It's so on that's true. It's hard to say with the code ones that I'm talking about, that I know that the OpenAI ones, let me go back to the OpenAI. So I know where you're getting at, Deb. I'm not seeing the OpenAI Big Shot there. The OpenAI AI paper, literally, what would you say, 50 authors on that one? Please, no wagering. Okay, the AlphaCode one, there's like, what, 30 authors on that one? This author, this paper, then they published it in Science in December, okay? So that was it, because it's Science, it's percolating for a long time. I didn't see any difference between the archive version and this version. But what's really interesting is there was a co-published with that paper was this commentary by Coulter, Psycho Coulter. And this is we can talk about this, this question of, is ignoring everything that is known about code the best way to write programs? Okay, so this is getting at that question of if these large language models are purely prediction based on what they're finding and not reasoning about what they're doing at all. What does that mean? This data-driven, because the argument here in the AlphaCode, in the AlphaCode, the thesis of the AlphaCode paper is they're creating, and this is Python. Remember what I said at the beginning. This is the real strong successes are coming from Python code primarily and JavaScript code, which dominate GitHub and is what's being harvested and trained on. But they're asking, is that actually the best way to write programs? And on the 9th, which is a couple of days ago, guess who else got a commentary published? Jim Hindler. And his is mostly his point is it's kind of a short piece that he wrote, but his point is kind of coming at a couple of aspects of let's kind of think about what this is all about. And the ACM policy committee is working on some of related things. But I'll come back to to Jim's statement of it's kind of he's very diplomatically saying, don't run down the street waving your hand and your arms and and stuff like that. Let's think about what it's good for and what it does and how it does it, which is kind of this what this commentary by Coulter is also saying. Okay, but this was published just went live on the 9th. I saw it this morning, actually, come across my Google alert. Like a little thing that wakes me up whenever my boss publishes. All right, so the OpenAI Codex, the OpenAI Codex is the supermodel of that OpenAI has created. You can if you start using Codex, guess what? Of course they have you jump right into doing, I don't know, is that Python? I think it's probably Python. JavaScript.
Yeah, that looks.
But so all over 8 Ways to Sunday on the OpenAI site, there's these little playgrounds that you can plug in or try to generate Python code. You can plug in, you can generate JavaScript code. There's supposed to be one on R. If you try generating R with their playground for R, it actually generates Python code. It's not very impressive. I don't know. Not a great thing. Okay. So before I ship this out, these are all supposed to be live. There's some really great videos on code generation, using Codex. These are excellent videos, just trying to talk through the transformer and attention models, explaining that attention paper, explaining the model presented there. This is the one that's by the the IntelliCode team. So it's not the OpenAI, but it's explaining that model. There's some really cool illustrated guides which they turn around. So it's some really excellent videos. Then these are links to papers. Most of these are the papers I linked to before. And again, this evaluating large language models. Probably of all the papers, if you're going to try to get through two of them, it's the attention is all you need. Obviously, that's the big one, and it's evaluating large language models. Okay, this is just a snippet, and I just wanted to see. I think what the point of this slide, and this is one of the first slides I grabbed, was it was meant to discuss basically the success, how much better Python was than anything else. But you can see that they were really focusing on Python code completion, JavaScript, that sort of thing. So what I wanted to I want to get to some of the R examples because I think they're kind of fun to play with, but I wanted to kind of show. So OpenAI has kind of anticipated some of the questions that people have and some of the concerns, and some of them you might not necessarily agree with. I realize this is a little hard to see, but it says Codex model was trained on tens of millions of public repositories, which were used as training data for research purposes in the design of Codex. We believe that this is an instance of transformative fair use. Okay. And I've got a couple slides on copyright and on the lawsuits that are happening here. But it is a really interesting question if the model in which these operate is pulling in examples of code from repositories, tokenizing on a command by command basis. Okay, creating these models and then doing a prediction based on this humongous mathematical model. Even if the result resembles something that's out there, can you say that it's actually a copy? Okay, so and we don't have to talk about that this second, but it's a question to think about: is if it's, is it actually, if it's mathematically derived from it? If you reconstitute,
So I think it depends if what the code that you're creating or replicating is an actual outlier. So outlier. Oh, should I press this?
Sorry, you muted yourself.
Nothing. I did nothing. Okay. Anyway, so
right.
The main problem that you can find in the big visual models is that sometimes they will memorize specific people, and that's a concern for data privacy. And in this case, I think it could be the same, that it's memorizing a specific code example because it's very particular.
So this is a very good point, and I hope in one of my R examples. So what you're saying turned up almost exactly in one of the R examples that I was playing with. An example of the characteristic, and it was partly created bad code, but it was bad because of how poorly the sampling was. So the problem again that we have with R is it's such a poor stepchild in all this sampling that's happening, is you don't, sometimes the model just kind of regurgitates something that's there. Okay, and that is it's fascinating, but it's an example of what you're saying.
Yeah, no, in that case, I would say that, yeah.
It's like inadvertent. So what they're saying is true maybe with Python.
Now, maybe
JavaScript,
Python.
maybe it works out that way.
Not every,
Mathematically, if you've got these other examples of, code where there's the sampling is, whoops, has that been sitting there while you guys?
No,
just a second ago.
Okay. So here is,
But in that case, right, where you're having kind of, I'm assuming we were talking about is you're having like a similar syntax pop out multiple times for something, right? Can we really be sure that it's coming from one sort of?
so that's the other side of it. That's a very
It's kind of some sort of like optimal blend of coding styles and then it put together. And just because it's reproduced doesn't mean it's copying because it's taking everything from like different places.
so this is exactly right. So so I was joking and I think I'll show this. One of the examples of the R code that was really working that I'll try to show. But I also jokingly said it's like an IDM lab question. Okay. It's just but it's so generic on what I'm asking that there's probably 50 Stack Overflow examples that are given doing almost exactly the same thing. So is it copyright infringement because it resembles like a third of the R repositories that are out there?
Yeah.
Okay. But if it's like, if I ask, so Aaron and I, and I'm not going to show you the example, but Aaron and I were kind of joking around because he's been doing this Gaussian mixed model stuff and for clustering. And I actually asked the GPTStudio Extension, RStudio, to do some Gaussian mixed mode modeling of the MT cars data set. And I'm thinking it's not going to be able to do that at all. Okay. What it actually did was it did it almost perfectly. And it did it using a package that Aaron didn't even know about, which is actually kind of cool. and when I asked it to use the package that he was using, it didn't do it right but the reason it worked on the first one was the result resembled like k-means clustering result. Okay, so that worked really nicely. And what Aaron was using did a different approach. So it's kind of like you didn't have enough examples to do it Aaron's way. So we'll get that a little bit. So this is just another thing, like kind of telling you what it's going to work really well on. Okay, this is the code completion part of the OpenAI AI documentation. It's really, really good. They do a wonderful job explaining lots of stuff, and there's lots of examples. You look like you're bursting with.
I know because I always struggle with regular expressions, and I recently asked ChatGPT, here's what I want to do.
Right, regular.
That was awesome. I didn't have to go through voluminous documentation to
Killer app.
the killer app regular expression.
It solved regular expression
Yes.
world. So
Yeah. But I was actually shell, maybe shell is regular expression. I don't know. I don't see regular expressions here.
but a lot of these are kind of the things you can find lots of examples of people like I created a whole website using, and what is it doing? It's spewing out some Python and JavaScript and TypeScript and maybe some SQL and, but these are things that there's lots of good examples of.
Yeah.
So, things like Ruby and stuff, PHP, the model, so this is actually kind of interesting. It's, you can kind of dive into what are these, the models that it's using, the maximum, the number of tokens, that's what's coming. That's the size of the tokenization that it's going to do. The plugin to RStudio kind of defaults to this, and this, what I'm usually been using this is one that they're trying to phase in. It says it's faster, but it's smaller. When you kind of go down this, looking for examples, notice all of the R examples that they have there. It's just they're overflowing with R.
I wonder if when you tried to get it to write R code and you said it gave Python, it saw the what is it, reticulate or whatever in RStudio that
No, it's,
write Python?
no, it was, no, what it actually, the little pop-up that they have for their little thing was just broken.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it wasn't putting up an R-oriented window. And, okay, so we're getting closer, I promise. This is RStudio or RPIrates. And so the plugin that I've actually tested is this plugin. It's called GPTStudio. When you install it, it creates add-ins to RStudio, which means it's like an extra menu that you can, if I've got something selected, I can go to this add-ins and have it perform that on in place on my code. And it took some getting used to and understanding. This is one that I just found about that the other guy recommends, and this actually looks like it's a hell of a lot more powerful. This works with the other one and extends it. And you can see that it does the things I described, but it's a little bit more sort of ChatGPT-ish about how it's doing it. So it just makes for richer extensions. Okay, so I guess this is my cue to pop over. Got this here. And this is all very hacky. But what I'll do, so GPTStudio, can you guys see it okay if I could try to make it larger here? Is that a little bit better?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Go into tools and go to your options and increase text size.
Will I break everything?
Oh, you won't.
Tell me where.
Global options at the bottom.
Okay.
Go to appearance.
Yeah.
Then crank your font size to like 16 or something like that.
Really?
Yeah,
How about 12?
whatever makes you sleep.
Actually, if you, I don't know, in the Mac, you can do command.
That's what he was
line.
saying earlier.
Yeah, so.
Okay. This is Linux. I just have to sit down and write a new one. Okay. So I've got an R notebook here, obviously, that I'm putting stuff in, and I had thought about making slides. So GPTStudio, probably GPT tools, they rely on a package, the OpenAI package. So they're building on the OpenAI API. So this is created by somebody else, and it's a little fiddly on how you install it. So they basically recommend that you clone, you fork the repository, and then, which is why you see Ole Erickson. I didn't write my own OpenAI package. You just install that. So you've got all the OpenAI stuff, including its authentication stuff. And also that the other one is GitHub. And then, what's really interesting, when you load GPTStudio, there is this disclaimer here, which echoes the disclaimer that you see on the Codex site, which is basically, don't throw stuff at our API that's proprietary or sensitive. Just don't do it. Just don't do that. So it's very nice that they warn that, and it's particularly important with this extension. So there's different kinds of extensions. I could just use the OpenAI extension and throw stuff raw at the API. What I've chosen to do here is it makes it a little bit easier for me to play, is use the RStudio extension. So I'm going to select text and have it in place, add stuff into my notebook. That's the model that I've chosen to follow. Okay. Part of dealing with this stuff whenever you're working with somebody's API, you've got to give the thing, and I already did that. I've done it a little while ago. Just like a fun little thing just to play with. So this is not this is just to prove that it's actually the OpenAI API. I've using raw text, create an image, which is an astronaut riding on a Holstein cow in a photorealistic style. There's our, so we are indeed working with the OpenAI API.
Does it make the same one every time you run it? Same.
It's similar.
Okay, so yeah.
It's similar. I think their sample size of Holstein cows. They obviously haven't visited Vermont.
But it's not necessarily deterministic based on the prompt, right? So it would be generating something slightly
How
different.
about if I,
Can you,
What's a Jersey cow?
oh, it's a sweetheart of a cow. They're a little bit smaller than a Holstein. They're cute as could be. Let's see if that's it's not quite a Jersey. It's got the big ears right. Jerseys are usually all brown.
Part of it is.
It is worthless.
Okay.
if you revert back and generate the previous one, could you do it again? Just to see how different the image is, if you change the wording back as it was.
I don't want to spend too much time doing that, Sasha.
What if you change it from an astronaut to your name?
Like John Erickson.
I feel offended. I feel offended by this.
You don't know, is that the Sasha?
Who's Sasha?
No, but John,
That's a Jersey cow, though. That's a Jersey cow.
Maybe Jersey cows are a different one.
Maybe it said, maybe it detected that we were upset.
Space, they're different.
Yeah, maybe because this one not in space.
I don't know who that Sasha is, but.
Through this API, can you change the model parameters? For example, like.
Yes, yeah, there's stuff in there that I totally don't understand, like temperature and barometric pressure and all that kind of stuff. I don't know. Okay, so this is
How probabilistic.
okay, so this is, obviously, this was maybe like the first example that I gave this when I got this up and running. And this is jokingly, that this is the kind of stuff we do in the basic intro to data math or data analytics, whatever kinds of things. Just write a scatter plot at empty cars data set using ggplot 2. Because if you don't specify ggplot, maybe it does base plot, maybe it doesn't. And make the points red. Okay, so the way you do this, the kind of the model I'm working with the add-in, you see my add-ins menu up here? So I'll go down here to the GPTStudio section. I'll say write the code from the prompt. And what you have to kind of learn is what you're supposed to do. So that didn't take a long time, okay? And we can kind of look at it and that looks like good code, okay? It doesn't know anything about my environment. So it doesn't know whether I've got something installed or not. It doesn't know that. Yeah.
For your use, I remember I was having one issue with kind of using this to create models, where empty cars is a popular loaded in data set, right? Is it able to access the data in your environment and the structure of it? For example, I was, so.
No. You can, okay. Let me correct that. There are cases where you can give it stuff.
Got it.
You can push it back. And there's some code examples, which I don't think I'll have time to play with, where it's like, ask it to create a sample data set. Creates a little table type thing. And say, now, make a CSV out of it. And it'll do something, like give you the instructions for saving, like write CSV kind of stuff. But, so this is really basic and that worked.
Quick thought on that, because empty cars has that speed, like, the different variables, right? Pay attention to why it is weight and miles per gallon always used. That's the generic one, always people use that. If you run the head command on the empty cars, you will see the other variables as well. Why that specifically decided to use the WT stands for the weight and for MPG.
Because that's always the example.
Yeah.
It's always the example.
Most used.
So now this is interesting. I saw this example. Write a function, okay? So first of all, just write a function. It's got to know how to write a function. But write a function, and let me go back. I shouldn't have said that, right? I shouldn't have said it's got to know how. it has to, its learning has to be strong enough that it's got the pattern for writing function in it. So, and I asked for it to write a function. But I'm asking it, I'll look at this, to impute missing values for all the columns using the mean of each column. So let's, if I go up here, see what it's actually going to try to do. So it's actually got to do something where it's got to write a function. It's got to know that we're going to give it like the structure. Okay, and so we're not going to actually test this too much, but so the function is going to be imputation mean. So it's kind of made up a name, the function. It's going to take the data frame. It's tis point off. It's going to do it's created a for next loop. Okay, that's based on the width of the data frame. It could have just, did an apply across the data frame. But it's doing some things that it knows to avoid NAs. So, and it's interpreted what we mean by impute. Okay, which is actually kind of cool. Okay, so it knows that it needs to replace or with the mean. So it's doing some subtle stuff there. So so there's some, but again, it doesn't have like a big table which says, how do I write functions? I must do this. It is doing this purely by matching what I've requested with patterns for function creation, function description in R that it knows about. That's how it's doing this, which is kind
But John, how do you think it's dealing with the impute? Because is that like in a comment someplace in code?
So that would have to be in, it would be like in comments. It would be in,
Okay.
or Stack Overflow is probably one of the places, the natural language sources that it's getting stuff. Stack Overflow is probably a huge help. Yep.
So in ChatGPT, I haven't obviously used this one, but they, when you ask a coding question, like for example, my regular expression thing, right? So it explains how, how that code is supposed to work. So does this do something?
You can
imputation?
Let's see if we can do that. Because I haven't, I don't, oh, shoot. What I'm going to try to do, I'm going to try to see which, I'm going to sort of answer your question by doing comment your code.
Okay, sure.
Okay, I'm going to do the comment your code and see what it comes up with. So, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, see, so Deb, you can't see it, but what it's done is it's explained my function. It's got before the function definition, it's got an explanation of what the function does. So following the architecture. Before the for loop, it doesn't apologize, but it goes straight into doing a for loop in R. And then right in the key line, it says replace the NA values with the mean of the column, which is what we interpreted it as. Okay, so it could well be that it found an example of that and it saw impute and it did that. Okay.
And the comments seem quite legit, except for the for loop part, I guess.
Well, but this is this whole ethical question of, can we use it to flesh things out and then modify it?
Right.
So this is one, so I was obviously the annoyed instructor. So I said, no, I want you to do this. So I should also make a comment. I think there's a way that we can feed back stuff, but I really didn't have that. I was more focused on different kinds of examples. I didn't want to, how do I take that back and say, redo that? You can do that in chat GPT if you just do raw coding in that, but I'm not sure how to use this plugin. So what I'm doing is I want to do the same thing that I just asked it to do, but I want it to use ggplot. I want it to do tidyverse because I'm all into aesthetics. Okay, so let's see what it does for that. And some of these examples, you see, I've got it commented below. This is where I ran an example before. And okay, it did some things that are goofy. Okay, you don't usually do your library call, your require in the middle of your function. That's kind of goofy. But maybe maybe it saw examples of doing that. Maybe some people do that. It's kind of weird. I mean, it did do a require rather than a library, but it is kind of weird. But its tidyverse form is excellent. The mutate all. So and you notice no for loops.
I think it has to be self-contained, right? Like if you ask it to create a function using, or sorry, a function from functions from dplyr, and it doesn't have anything in there to do with loading in dplyr.
But you're saying there's a,
That's gonna work.
you're saying that, but it would have had to, but it's not reasoning, okay? It's got a, but what you're saying is true. It's following patterns that it's got, and maybe there are patterns.
If there was a function that someone created that was a using dplyr function, it would have to have that in there in order for it to be taken in. Like
It needed to be standalone. I mean, I think,
Yeah.
the fact that we're seeing that as a result, okay, means that what you're saying is true. It had to learn that. Okay, so it's seeing patterns of that. Maybe it's a good way to do it. You know, make it a self-contained function.
your functions, but
Well, you know, okay, now here's an interesting example. There's again, this is one of these crazy examples that are kind of like, you know, like something you might pull out of the air for IDM. I wanted to create a plot using ggplot2 and the Palmer Penguins package. Palmer Penguins is another standard package like mtcars or iris. It's okay. Let's see what it does. What kind of a thing is it going to give me? And we got to see. So the things we want to. This is where we're getting at that. How much sampling has it had? If we start seeing craziness in the code, that's an indication that we're kind of going off the rails. We're getting into parts of what it has and what it hasn't done. Okay, so let's look at this. So we're seeing it has no idea if I've installed these or not. But if you go on the like things like Stack Overflow, they usually don't spend a lot of time on how you install things. They just assume you install and you just use the library. Okay, so let's look at the ggplot structure. Penguins is the name of the data frame. Once you install Palmer Penguins, it wants to do, and actually what we could do is let's just like look at penguins. Let's see what. I think make sure that's in there. Where is penguins? Why do I not see penguins? Where's penguins not coming up?
I think when you load Palmer Penguins, it gets loaded into your environment, like it's kind of like.
It's there, but I don't see it.
Yeah, it's there, but it's not loaded into your environment. So if you call penguins in the console, like view penguins, it might come.
Oh, by view, okay. That's,
Uppercase.
yeah, there it is. No, I didn't have it wrong. I just, you know, okay, so this is penguin. So just take note. We've got flipper length we've got body mass. Okay, so we see that sort of thing. Okay, so let's go back. So penguins, so data equals penguins, that looks good. We got flipper length versus body mass G. We didn't tell it what kind of a plot to do. So it's just assuming to do a scatter plot. Color, it's going to color it by species. Do we have species? Let's look at that. Yes, we have species. Species is not a factor. Well, we don't know if species is a factor or not, do we? And then we've got our labels. Nice, it gets points. Then it gets instructor points for properly labeling his plot. Okay. Let's see what it does. Let's see if that actually works. Boom. There we go. Nice little plot. Okay. Student Chatty got through that lab assignment. Okay. You're gonna have to get those lab assignments harder. Okay. So here's one. using R, perform a principal component analysis on the MT-CARS data set and plot the results using ggplot. Okay, so there's I'm giving it lots of clues here. I'm giving it more clues than I would give an IDM student probably. So what I'm telling it to use R, I'm telling it to do not a PCA, a principal component analysis on MT-CARS, plot the results, use ggplot. Okay, so let's see what code it generates. Whoops. Let's see what. Yeah. Can guess what it's going to get wrong.
I want to see which function they're going to print comp or what.
Well, it's going to use ggplot to plot. I'm not asking it what we actually asked the students to. We when we first do PCAs, we show them ggplot, but we actually make them construct it from scratch because we want more control over the axes and stuff. So let's okay. So look at this. There's a lot of things, and this is getting to your point. Is look at the stuff that it did. Okay, where the hell did it get that from? Okay, what's that? What's that? This is coming from it. It's somehow when it's pulling when it's doing its decode, and the prediction, it's seeing things like section headers in some documentation or tutorial, and it's linking that into essential code. Okay, so it's pulling in this garbage. That because we don't have enough examples that don't have it do that. So this is getting into the attention, when we talked about that encoding model where it was talked about attention. When this was encoded, when this was brought in, it viewed that sort of thing as essential. Okay, that it tightly linked to the rest of what it was trying to do. Okay, so.
And
Garbage, okay.
maybe this isn't the first example that's done this, but it's the first one I've noticed. You asked it to write code, and this time it included comments in the code without you asking for comments.
Okay, it included comments, okay? It included the installs, okay, a couple of the installs. It didn't actually, it got it wrong, okay? It guessed on this. The ggplot is not a CRAN package. It's a Git package. You have to, but you have to have DevTools installed in order to install ggplots and use the install_git. So it was close on this, okay? Now, this is good. It doesn't need this. Oops, sorry. It doesn't need that. Data MCARS, fine. PR comp, knows how to do a PCA. Wow, genius. Okay. Now, this is the interesting thing here. Now, let's come back to the actual plot, okay? Because that actually is interesting. Look at this other stuff it had here. This is a freaking like somebody asking, how do I solve this bug? And it got it into its learning model. So
Yes, sir.
see what it's, this is there because when it learned, and it was in this little broom closet in the internet, it pulled this into its model and it sees this as part of it. So this is an end of doc, right? Okay. So
User is Joseph
I know.
in library 3.6.
yeah, so this is kind of uncovering, this is shedding light on the probably less so on R specifically, but more on the limitations of these large language models when you're trying to do things that are verified error. Okay, so this is a really kind of a cool learning, is that it's not because it's a spaz at R, it's because it hasn't sampled enough R. If we were doing Python, it probably put a nice little bow on top and all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah, this makes me actually question
Okay.
whether the term learning is appropriate at all to apply, because it doesn't really learn.
oh, how do kids learn? What do they do?
You're making adults.
Exactly. But they extract something out from it, right? This is just autocomplete.
Oh, maybe there's a layer or two in our brains that, that OpenAI guys haven't figured out yet. So
Exactly. So this is
but there's a lot that they have figured out.
Or maybe using it for other stuff
So-
besides
so-
just like code completion.
So tell me,
Synthesize anything.
so those of you who know stuff, tell me why this would barf. Okay,
Unless who knows.
so look at the ggplot command. So it knows that its instructor, somehow its instructor wants coloring by groups. Okay? So where's it going to get the groups from? Where does it think the groups are coming from? It's looking.
Empty cars.
It's pulling it out. We gave it empty cars. No. We gave it PCA. Okay, so it wants to get the coloring of the groups in the PCA, so that the different groups, the different clusters. It thinks it's going to get that from something called cylinders. Cylinders, that's right. But it's not going to get that. That's just stupid. It's not going to get it from there. Okay. What does it really want to do? It really wants to get it. It's trying to follow kind of a pattern of where you've done it's like some sort of clustering, like k-means. You've got your cluster assignments and you pass that in. Okay, so this code here, this will work if we get rid of that. If we get rid of that, so if we get rid of that where it's trying to use it doesn't know that cylinder is MT car. So it's kind of following like a ggplot pattern in a way. It thought it was going to get that from what you passed in. Now, if we do maybe this, if it had added, say this, okay, and then if we look at KM and its dollar cluster, maybe if we did this, oops, sorry. Maybe if we did this, see what that does. Yeah. And actually it didn't do that as it needed something. It kind of scaled that, but that's not bad. We could have, it lost points for the way it did its legend, but otherwise. Okay, so could we ask it more specifically? Could we give it, this is where we're getting into, if the person has enough knowledge to specify what they're asking, they just write the code, okay? Oh, oops.
They don't know the syntax.
Well, okay, that's a very good point. If they know what they want,
I don't know the
and
syntax.
and the tool can give them the syntax, what's the problem, right?
Right.
So I think that's really what we're looking at here. Yeah, but you also, as we just saw in that example, you need to know enough about what's being produced
Right.
to sanity check that. And what I just showed in that previous example is a classic mistake that the students have. Is like they're not necessarily, maybe they know that they have to do how they do the grouping, but they don't necessarily know where it's coming from or the syntax thing. And okay, so here, now look at this. This is another example of where it's throwing in, it thinks it's throwing in comments, but look at how it's throwing them in. Previously, it did them as comments. Now it's totally spazzing out. Plus, it's throwing in this sort of R markdown syntax, but really, really badly. Okay, so it's and it's doing, once again, it's trying to like library cluster. What the heck is that even? You know,
One letter off needs an R at the end, library cluster.
Well, you know, but it did do, I don't even, you know, and okay. So it's going through, it did do the k-means. Okay, it did it correctly. It's got a k-means result. It's doing 3. It decided, it's guessing at 3. Okay, so probably what it did was it's looking at examples of this, you know, because MT cars is a standard data set. It kind of, most examples use 3 as k on k-means, so maybe it's doing that. And then it's got our, now look at this here. Oops, equals k-means result dollar cluster. What did I do? You know, in the previous example? I did, so it's doing exactly what I did, okay? So there was, okay, and then the other thing that was kind of clever is it did this. I don't even know if that's, and I don't know where the heck it got that from, okay?
It's probably from ChatGPT, right? It's
Yes, yeah. So look at, so what it's doing here is that it's using a specific URL to somebody's example of somebody's image result.
Does it load?
Let's see, I bet it, well, we can do it this way. It is no longer available. You see it right there. So this is, so think about all this stuff. So this is, again, this rarefied sample that it's working off of. It's pulling, it's heavily relying for the result that it's producing on some examples somewhere that it's finding, and including all of the boundary, you know, all of the interstitial stuff. So it's, and it's irregular because of how it's model, how the decoding is happening is going to particular places. So we see an inconsistency. On one example, it was using a particular syntax for the interstitial stuff. One example, it was using comments. Another example is it's throwing in the stuff that's just commentary from somewhere.
So in this particular example, let's say, you know, the image loaded and that image came from documentation, right?
Yeah.
And the comment there says the resulting plot should look something like this, right? So that would, you know, let's say, you know, the person who's using this is a learner. So by comparing that, you know, image that would have loaded with the image that's generated from the, you know, the code, you could debug it, right?
Oh, yeah. So the style here, this is a good example of, in the markdown part of a notebook of embedding an image, a static image.
Yeah.
This may have come from, you know, it could have been from the RPub site, maybe, something like that, that it harvested. So it's correct syntax for embedding an image in the markdown portion, you know, outside of our code chunk. So that's correct, but it's,
But what I'm saying is, like, you know, if that image, like the image were to work, right? Maybe it's the image from some proper documentation.
but
Couldn't you, like, you know?
but the other thing, but it's not correct. We don't generate, they didn't have the code for generating the image, so they've mixed things up. So
I see.
they've got the code for, the correct code for biplot and putting it immediately following the code chunk, okay? And then it's like the predictor had it like, and now you need to actually, in your markdown, put the image. And so they got that from somewhere else.
Well, I mean, when you call ggplot, it would pull up your image. I think she's saying that it would be a comparison, so then you can make sure that the code is working properly.
That's what I was thinking. Like, you know, the resulting plot should look something like this. You know, it sounds like, you know, something you
I
would
see what you're,
study, right?
I see what you're saying.
So you could,
Tended to be.
yeah, like,
Oh, yeah.
then you can, like, if the image doesn't look like the rest.
I know.
Yeah.
I get it.
But it's then back to the copyright thing. I'm assuming with something like RPubs, it would be kind of fair use to use, but if these are just being extracted from.
By the way, let's look at our good example here. So one, I think we're getting on here. I wanted to do just one other example here. This is the penguins thing. I think I got this. K-means clustering on Palmer penguins, then perform a PCA and plot. So we sort of were successful K-means and empty cars and doing the ggplot. If we tried same example, but different data set, what would it actually do? And let's look. We got the installations, yeah, whatever. We got our libraries. So we're doing the K-means on column, what's that?
3 to 5 only, right?
It says, yeah, columns 3 to 5.
I forgot what's actually on the variables on
I think they're the only numeric.
penguins.
Those, okay, so, okay, but keep in mind, we're working with the data frame here, okay? Keep that in mind. So we might be able to do the K-means on the data frame. No. So, and we definitely aren't doing, we're definitely not doing our PCA on that. So my point is that it doesn't know enough. It hasn't seen enough examples of the numerical operations, the matrix algebra operations, to do the right thing as far as typing that the data types is concerned. In some of the other examples that we've seen, it has been doing some, you may have seen it. It's doing some things correctly. It's seen examples for this needs to be a factor, so it's doing as factor, that kind of stuff. But here it's spazzing out on it. So again, this is one of these things of, do we have sufficient examples in its learning to get things like typing? The difference between the numerical part of a data frame and the matrix, and making that a matrix so you can do things like PCA with it. That's a real subtlety that I'm sure it does it right in Python. Just one last thing. This is another stock example, and I thought it was kind of interesting so part of this, what this new kind of large language model is, and the way these things work is they're able to do generative stuff, okay? Just out of the blue stuff, like that, like the astronaut riding the Holstein, whatever. So here we're asking it, just go and create a data frame, a sample data frame, a sample CRM, customer relationship management. We're not telling it what CRM is. We said, create a CRM data set. And write some code to analyze it and plot the results, okay? And so now I should tell you that I actually did some experiments where I said, create a sample data set. Before I did this example, I said, create a sample data set, and it just created like in line, like a table that it showed me. So I modified that and said, no, create a data frame that has this data set in it. And so it gave me a nice little data frame. That's where we got this from. And it thinks that CRM has customer IDs and customer names and purchase amounts. That's what it knows CRM is. Okay, so I got a nice data frame that and oh, by the way, it's documenting it, right? So it's creating a valid data frame. And I didn't tell it what analysis to do. I just said, do some, what did I say?
Analyze it.
Analyze it. I said, analyze it. Okay, Mr. Instructor man. Well, this is what, we'll create some mean things. Mean, median, sum, okay? And then Mr. Big wants us to plot it. Okay, and there. So this is all pretty straightforward. And because I told it to use ggplot. And so it did a very basic ggplot bar plot. So What do we think? Are we all on a job?
No.
I don't think we are yet. The thing is that it'll learn exponentially.
Mhm.
So it's not fantastic right now, but in a couple of years, you know.
I doubt it. All it can do is autocomplete. It doesn't really learn.
And on top of that, I mean, it's not able to continue learning if we're not producing more code. Otherwise, it would kind of then
Exactly.
self-learn on its own generated code, and its flaws would kind of exponentiate and just become worse and unusable.
It cannot provide any new insight. It can only autocomplete what's previous knowledge is out there. It doesn't generate any new insights, yeah.
But I don't think that makes it valueless in any regard. Like, I feel like as someone that uses R a lot, just being able to kind of write a skeleton that you can go back and fix is really time saving.
So the
Giving it
que-
kind of a task and having it generally outline it and then going in.
Oshani's example of regex
Yeah.
is so awesome.
Like I never, like, I'm a computer scientist, the regex syntax is so bad, I always struggle, I would eventually get it right, but I would have spent hours, trying to figure out this damn thing, right? So I think in some aspects, computer science is more about thinking, the process of solving problems, right? So just astronomy is not about learning how to use a telescope. This is a tool, a telescope, and we should know how to use it appropriately. And
Should we not use the James Webb telescope because it makes certain things too easy?
exactly, yeah, then we figure out other great things to explore, right? So same thing here, right?
To me, the lesson is I need to make more R coders and get them writing open source code so that it trains the model so that
Yeah.
I can use this stuff.
And I think we should add a course to the, in the SIS in the future, sis.rpi.edu, how to properly use ChatGPT to write your assignment. I mean, 20 years, 10 years from now, it's going to be used, right? Let's train the students how to do that.
Well, I think they're training themselves right now. I'm really,
I'm saying, it's train itself, but
There are so many guides out
Itself, yeah.
there are guides how to use ChatGPT properly to generate websites.
but I think, I hope, thank you very much and thank you for your patience because we're gone almost a half an hour over. But I think that what, the biggest thing that I wanted to do tonight was to kind of explode, this is not mysterious. This is, it's very, very cool, natural language and processing, et cetera. The whole model that.
Yeah.
And so think about this, that this is, it's kind of a pun to say this is not predictable or this is all predictable. But it's not a big mystery of what's going on. And it's, and R is really the poor stepchild, but it allows us to see some examples and kind of understand. It actually breaks apart how this stuff works a bit, so we can kind of understand what the bigger world that ChatGPT is good at and isn't good at.
Yeah. Now, this privacy example, that really intrigues me, partly because I'm teaching federated learning on Friday. And actually that example would be pretty amazing. So these large language models, they have this baseline that was learned from the web corpus. But if you have a very sensitive data, you still want to get the model to learn from your data. But we can, maybe inject some noise via differential privacy or something, right? And, still get the goodness of the model. That would be pretty cool. Actually, if you can give me that,
Oh, you'll get, I'll share everything. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very good example because it has the file, the path of the individual and yeah. Yeah.
I mean, but I didn't go looking for that. That just happened. I literally was just kind of trudging through
Right.
different things. But it kind of shows how, well, I've got this example and boy, it works, or it pretty much works. And I changed one thing, or I did change it slightly, and it just goes right off the tracks. And Why is that? That's that whole construction. Well, it's partly the attention stuff. And I think it's a funny anomalous example of where the attention stuff haywire,
Right.
probably because it's such a rarefied sample.
Have you seen any articles about, application of this in a federated learning setting where you don't,
Well, I could probably find it, but I haven't seen it yet.
Okay.
Yep.
So I'm interested in that because, that's immense potential in private data.
I'm sorry. It's just that I have two thoughts right now that I want to voice.
Yeah, go ahead.
One of them is obviously, how can you now everyone has access to it.
Oh.
And anyone can cheat.
Mhm.
And most people will cheat. How do you make it so that students learn learn the subject that you want to teach instead of learn how to use the tool that helps them how to cheat?
Could I speak to that? So those are very good questions. Well, the first thing I want to say about access, the access to the API is kind of being controlled, so it's because there's such a heavy load. So, and you see this particularly with just a regular ChatGPT, which is the chat app that's sitting in front of the OpenAI API. But that if you want full-time 24/7 guaranteed access, that's a paid thing now. And sort of the free access is off hours, but that's mostly ChatGPT. But right now you still have free access to the API. Then that's what we're seeing. I was GPTStudio is using just the API, and that's free access still. Okay, as far as the learning, okay, I think what this shines the light on is that it's not about the mechanics of it. For example, in Intro to Data Math, it's about the problem solving. It's about what they're learning. It's not about the R syntax. Okay, we're not grading on. I don't think we are. We're not grading on R syntax, have we? Did you ever lose points for?
No.
Because you wrote perfect code. No, no. My point is and actually, how this stuff should happen. Intro to Data Math is a combination of they're learning the linear algebra, they're learning the math behind things like PCA. They're learning all of that theory. At the same time, they're learning how to put it into practice with the labs, which are R-based, okay? And the labs meant to exemplify what they're learning in the theory. So it's sometimes the coding itself is challenging, but the most important thing is getting the results. And the most important thing is the problem that they're working on. And the course tries to get to the place where they're thinking about the problem and not worried about the coding of stuff. Okay. And so they still have to do the work, but the students are judged on how the analysis that they're doing. So here's this data. We're asking you to do blah, 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 blah. And they have to go through that. And unless they can find this massive repository, which is this data that nobody's ever seen before, okay, those are the kind of problems. Is they can do analysis on Palmer penguins and empty cars and iris all day long, and ChatGPT doesn't have enough examples to make the leap to the Wisconsin breast cancer data set or a data set that we just got from the Neural Stem Cell Institute. It doesn't know how to do that. It has no idea unless there's millions of tokens out there of
I know
all factor data that.
The MZOR biodegradability thing. You give that to ChatGPT and it's not going to be able to do absolutely anything.
No.
Features with no names, you've got no sources with anything.
Right. Well, here's an analogy. What the thing that the cheating example that you had from what's it? Cheaters Are Us or whatever. What's the thing that the students use?
Oh,
where you found the mean method example.
Oh, Chegg.
check,
She
check,
put it on
check.
Chegg.
Yeah,
That's
check.
Chegg.
Yeah, thank you, check. Yeah.
Some person asked online on chat during the IDM class about, we had this hypothesize, it's just to teach you the concept of like,
It's a classification.
like separating hyperplanes, right, to use as a classifier. And Dr. Bennett came up with this mean method, which just uses the means of two different.
It's a really crappy,
It does not work on absolutely anything in practice. It's just to teach you how to do it.
right.
And someone put it on Chegg and they didn't get any answers because nobody knows what the mean method
You
is.
put a question, you were asking, how do I apply the mean method to this?
The mean method doesn't exist outside the scope of the class, so you can't really, my thought is.
I actually tried. I asked GPT Studio to do such and such with the mean method, and it failed. It did not know how to.
So I don't think we answered his question, which is
I'm sorry.
how to like, prevent cheating, right? So I think
It's the level in which you, so
And I get it that in in
cheating is what,
context of,
is what you define it as, right? The cheating is what you,
so if you like as an instructor in my class, I say yes, it's okay to use ChatGPT, but please declare and like maybe also provide the prompts because I'm curious, right? So then like it's a level playing field, so everybody can use ChatGPT and everybody can learn about it.
sort of like open book.
Yeah, and I think Jim Hindler had a very nice example in his thing, like where he talked about the graphing calculator, right? So he said when he was.
When he said like when he was, a student, like nobody allowed them to use calculator.
Graphing calculator.
No, just like a regular one. Then when he started teaching, like, then they were allowed to use that Texas Instruments graphing calculator. Then now it's like everybody's trying to.
So, yeah, I lived that as well. So my dad was a physics teacher, high school physics teacher. And at the time that I was in high school, I know it's hard to believe, the scientific calculators, handheld pocket calculators, scientific calculators were coming out. And what he would do for his physics classes, he just bought a box full of the TI calculators. And so in his teaching, he would put up some problem on the board and he'd hand out the box. Everybody in the room got a calculator, and he said, well, let's work the problem. And the point was, he didn't care whether, he wanted them to work the problem, not, and not worry about the scribbling down as students. And he knew that by having the calculators, he could just crank through examples in class. And so he was teaching the problem. He's teaching how to solve it, not worrying about the mechanics of that, not letting that get in the way.
I think there's a different, so I'm assuming this is just for foundational level stuff, right? I mean, there's a different level of abstraction between using a calculator where you know how to solve the problem and just inputting natural language and getting a result.